Hello game makers, this is GameMaker Rob, and in today's episode we are going to tidy up a couple of things with two new features. Well, one of them is we are going to have a state system for the player, and the other is we are going to have notifications, for example, for leveling up. You can also adapt that to other notifications too. So let's get started. Okay, so last episode was actually supposed to be the very final one, but when I was coding, I discovered that I had some issues with the new text system and a boss battle. So, for example, you could walk away during the conversation with the boss before or after the battle. If you did it after the battle, then the boss wouldn't die. So, I needed to find a way to keep the player locked into the conversation with the boss. And I tried to keep the code as samey as before, without changing too many things. But I also decided it was a good time to change the player into using a state system rather than using the disabled variable. A state system. Do I need to explain this? Yeah, I should do. Okay, so a state system. Imagine you have like maybe 3, 4, 5 different states, and the blocks of code within those states will only run if an object is set to that state, and it's a really good way to control what's going to happen, and you don't have to worry about too many variables. You only have to worry about one, i.e. what state is the player in. So to facilitate this, we're going to go into the create event of obj init. And I think this region was called player stats before. I've just renamed it to player because it has more than just stats in it now. And we have a new enumerator called EPL states. Normal state is the state the player is going to be in between him doing things. So while he's walking around, that's going to be normal. When he talks to someone, he's going to be in talking state. If he moves onto a warp object, he's going to be warping. When he's shopping, he's going to be, in a shop state, etc., etc. Notification. This is just used for the level up text, because I've added some text to the game now for when you level up, like a string of messages. It's something I wanted to add last time, but as I said, I discovered I needed to improve the code in some way, so I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to do the state system now. Originally, it was going to just be for patrons or for owners of the project from itch, but I didn't want to leave the tutorial in a bad state, so it was worth the extra effort anyway. So once you've got this down, we also need this global variable. All it's for is when we are talking to a boss, this variable is going to get set to talking, and in the level up script, that's where we now control the player state after a battle, because if one of the heroes is going to level up, then the state is going to be notification, otherwise it's going to be normal, unless last player state is set to talking, and then it's going to get set to talking. You'll see in the code anyway. I don't want to go over it too much. So once you've got this down, we may as well fill in the rest of this create event as well. So NPC text. I've added one more character. This is just to create a cutscene object. So when you first speak to a boss, the object gets created straight away. And then we've added the asterisk there. So this is what's going to create the cutscene object. And I think that's it. Yeah, that's it for the create event. Okay, so we're going to take a look at the create event of the player object now. If you take a look at mine, you can see that there's a yellow mark next to disabled, show menu, and show shop. What that means in GameMaker 2 is that this variable is only used once, so it's not called anywhere. By the end of this episode, all 3 of these variables of yours should also be yellow. If they're not, then you've missed it somewhere. All you've got to do is do Control-Shift-F, type in the variable. So for example, let's type in show shop, find all, and at the bottom in search results, it'll show you every instance of that variable, and if you double click on it, it will jump you there as well. So if you get to the end of the episode and one of those 3 variables is not yellow, then just check for it. It should be pretty clear what you need to do by the end, because we're just going to be changing things into the player state. That's the main thing we're going to do. Right, so we have a new variable called state, and we're going to set the player state to normal. So we're going to set the player state to normal, and then also down here, if the player's warped, then this global is going to be false, and we're going to set the player state to warping, so we know the player is trying to warp, and this is what's going to run the warping code inside the step event. And you'll notice disabled has been commented out here as well. After this episode, you can just get rid of these 3 variables if you like. It's up to you. Take number 655, player step region. Okay, step event. So, movement region. Previously, we had a line that said, if not disabled and there is no instance of OBJ cutscene, we don't need it. We just need to check the player state is normal. And this encompasses the whole of this region. Like that. So, that's all we need to change for movement. Warping, we no longer need this line. What we do need to check for is that the player state is normal. If it is normal, then we're going to run this region here. It just checks for warp objects, that kind of thing. And then at the very end of the region, this region here, we need this line. We want to set the player state to warping. What this is for is just in case we have warp objects inside the same room. Otherwise, if there's a new room, then the creation code of the player object is going to run, and it's either going to be normal or warping based on what happened. So again, here inside this else block, checking the state is warping. We don't need disabled. We're just going to change it back to normal. Same thing here. And then if there is no warp object but player can't warp, then get rid of this and set the play state to normal. We don't need this line either, because if the player was going to be in battle, then his state would be battle, so none of this code would run anyway. Let's minimize this. So in the shop region, we get rid of show shop, change it to this. In the cancel region, get rid of these 2, replace it with this. I don't think these are changed. No. So that's the shop region. It's just these 2 things that have changed. Talking region. So we don't need to check for disabled. We're just going to check for pressing OK. We also don't need this either. We just want to check for the existence of an NPC object and that the player state is normal. We don't need talking. We just want to set the state of the player to talking. And then I moved some code out of this region, so This region used to have a lot more, but now it only has this much. Just to make sure you have that, as I do. And then I'm going to minimize it. Before I go into the rest of this stuff, let me make sure you've got the curly bracket sorted out. So because I moved some code around, this last curly brace wasn't needed. So if pressed OK, it's going to encompass the pressed OK region, and inside that region we've got this one and this one. If the state isn't talking and there's no more messages to come, then this is going to happen. The code hasn't changed, just maybe the layout has changed. So make sure you have all the curly braces set up like this. Whenever you click before a curly bracket, you can see there's another one that's been highlighted. This is how you can check whether they are matching or not. So once you've done that, I'm going to go into not this one, is it? No. This region now. Next message. So we've got the extra line there for checking, for creating a cutscene object, sorry. Minimize these for now. Okay, so inside the shopkeeper region, don't need any of these three variables. We're just going to set the player state to shop. We've created a new region called create cutscene object. We're just checking for the asterisk or asterisk. And then if there isn't an instance of cutscene, then create it. And then just delete the asterisk from the text. That's all it does. And then in new party member, don't need these variables. We're just going to set the state, this one here, to name creator. And that should be it. That's it for pressed OK. So now we're going to do, I don't think I've changed this one, have I? Yeah, sorry. So I did. So inside move away from NPC, we don't need this line. We're going to replace it with this. So we're checking the state is talking. And then inside this code, change the state to normal. So inside menu, we don't need this line, replacing it with this. Up, down, we're adding this script to reset the text box. This was because the text wasn't going away with the new state system. So this is what's inside the script, just in case you don't have it. Same here. And then left and right, same thing here as well. I managed to just catch another bug. So this line has just been changed. All we're doing is checking to make sure that the text box has finished its message, because what was happening is when we were casting spells and stuff, when we were pressing space to go to the next message, it was casting a spell as well. So we're just checking the message is finished first on this line. Then inside main menu, magic. We don't need these two lines. We're just going to have this line here. Inventory. We're going to add create the text box settings here. And then make sure you've got the quick game code from last time. Check this one. So inside this, inside the equip or unequip item region of inventory, getting rid of these notification messages and putting this one there instead. And then inside this last bit here, let's just check where we are. So oops. So we're still inside if PL states, if state is menu, and at the bottom we have the press cancel region. We don't need these two. We're just going to replace it with normal. And then at the very bottom we've got a new region called notification. We're going to check to see if the text object is done. This is only valid if we are in the notification state, which is only going to be active right now if one of the heroes levels up. So we're just going to check for a key press, reset the text box, set the player state to normal. And that's it for the step event. So now we want to go into the draw GUI region of the player. We don't need the talking region anymore. Just get rid of it. So player menu no longer needs these two variables. We're just going to check for menu state or shop state. This is because some of this code is valid for both states. So rather than having to do it twice, we're just going to check for both states. Draw player stats hasn't changed. So we've added to check for the menu state here. And in the menu only region, we've changed this line to this line to this line to this line to this, and then let's just minimize these regions that we've done. And then in the inventory region, we've changed this line to this line. Change this to this. And in shop inventory, changing this to this. Oops, sorry, changing this one to this one. And that's it for the draw GUI. So now we're going to fix the step event of OBJ Goodnight. In the fade in region, we're just going to get rid of this line here, disabled, and change the player state to normal. And we also need to update the innkeeper script. So we're going to set the player state here and get rid of this line. And we also want to update end conversation. We don't need this variable. Okay, so now we're going to go into the step event of the battle spawner object. At the very top, we want to get rid of this line and change it to this line because we're checking for the player state. Then in initialize battle, we don't want this one. We're going to set the player state to battle. And that should be it for this region. I don't think there's actually anything else in this region now. Oh yeah, there is near the bottom. Let's get to it first. Just make sure you've got this down from last time. And in the battle over region, make sure you remove level up scripts from here. And again, in the same region, battle over, we don't need to set the table to false because it's not necessary. We're not going to change the state here either. What we're going to do, as I said at the start, is we're going to run the level up script here, and then we're going to set the player state inside it. Let me just check the rest of the step event, and then we will do that next. Okay, so if we go into SCR level up, we've got a new variable called there is a level up. All this is for is to let us know if anyone did actually level up or not. If they didn't, then we don't want to stop the player moving around. That's all it's for, really. So this line is going to check to see whether there was a level up. And here is where we set the player's state to notification. So it's just going to be a text box saying someone's leveled up. That's what it does. We've also got the text there. And at the bottom, if there wasn't a level up, then we're going to set the player state to last player state. So now we want to go into OBJ day night. Step event, I think it is. There we go. So step events of OBJ day night. Replace this line with this line. And then the end step for OBJ init. Replace this with this, and this with this. Just basically setting the player state to name creator when there's a name creator, and setting the player state to normal when we have saved the game. Then in OBJ name creator, the create event, we just want to get rid of the text box with this line, and that should pretty much be it. One thing that I've never mentioned is that obviously in the game you don't want to see all these purple and whatever coloured shapes all over the place. You want them to be invisible. All you have to do is, if we go into our MISCs folder and set these to not visible, it's still going to work. So I'm just going to run the game just to show you that it still works, but they're hidden. So there we go. We can walk back and forth. And all we need to do now is get rid of the interaction object. So for that, if you go into the draw event of the player object, you just want to get rid of this line, or don't delete it, just comment it out. Just so you can still use it for testing. Run the game. There we go. Everything should still work as normal. Big thank you to everyone who has been following this series. It has changed a lot from what I first envisioned, and that has the knock-on consequence of having to change code. Maybe you learned something from that as well. You've seen a few different ways to do things, and good ways and bad ways. Unless there's some major bugs to fix, this is going to be the last episode of the starter kit. But the patrons have voted on the next tutorial, and it's going to be another series, not a big one. It's not going to be a huge series, I don't think, but it's going to be a tactics battle game in the vein of Tactics Ogre, but with a couple of things mixed in from Fire Emblem, like the weapon triangle. That was one of the requested features, so I think I'll add that in as well. I'm also going to be showing you how to do it in isometric, because I think games look even better when drawn in isometric. We're going to code the whole thing in 2D, and then we're just going to draw it in isometric. So I hope you enjoyed the series, and I hope you are all continuing to make your RPGs. Don't give up. It's going to be worth it when you finish the game. But I will catch you next time. Bye for now.